Welcome back to the Backseat Startup Podcast, where we give unsolicited advice to strangers on the internet.
All right, today I'm joined by Max Weisbod of Baton. Max, thank you so much for being on the show. Can you share a little bit more about your background?
I'm Max Weisbod, founder of Baton. We help fractional executives, execute against their strategies. We find that when fractional executives come into early stage firms, they are able to put in place the direction that they want to take things, but there aren't the correct operational resources in place in the firm to actually execute against their strategy. So the last 2.5 years, as a fractional product leader who noticed this problem and had to resolve it myself, I've built out my own team. And through Baton, we give access to other fractional executives to leverage my team. So we're able to do everything from like mapping out user journeys, setting up your first CRM, to even moving you out of spreadsheets and building out full stack reporting solutions. And we do it for companies that are around 500 to 5 million in annual run rate.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a perfect background. Fractional is becoming such a big thing, and I see so much growth in this area. So really excited to have you on and chat more and give some unsolicited advice to strangers. So this is the show where we head over to Reddit and find a question asked by a founder, and you and I will bounce some thoughts around and give advice to the founder.
Sounds fun.
Let's jump in. Should I resign?
Should I resign?
There's always some really solid drama pieces in here. Losing interest in the work.
What's this person doing? We are a total of 5. What does this person do? Is this what's this person's job? They're making me create an AI algorithm for our system. I have a lack of expertise in that particular subject. I mean, this is kind of funny, because these early stage firms that have basically very little to no proprietary data and no experience with labeling data make these pitches and get money in the door off of the concept that they are going to take rote manual work and automate it away like nobody else has using AI. And it's just about always a lie. Maybe that's changing now with generative AI and large language models and these agent-based frameworks. But I mean,
yeah, when I read this, I thought they would be a perfect candidate for Baton. So let's do this one if you're cool with it. So I will read it for the sake of the listeners who aren't watching. So this post is titled, "Should I Resign?" And the body is, I joined a startup company 2 months ago. The startup company was founded by my friend and his girlfriend. We are a total of 5, 3 devs, 1 business, 1 designer in the company, and we are all in college. I'm thinking of resigning because I'm losing interest in the work they give me. I initially applied for a software engineer position, and I told them that I specialized in the back end. During the interview, they asked me if it would be okay for me to explore other aspects, such as mobile app development. I said yes. We recently joined a hackathon. Long story short, it's basically a convention where different startups create a system within 2 weeks and pitch it to investors. I feel bad if I would resign now and leave my friends hanging. Now they are making me create an AI algorithm for our system, and I have trouble accomplishing a task because of my lack of expertise in that particular subject. I'm losing interest because I find AI difficult. In addition to the decline of interest is that they don't pay me, nor have they allotted any equity. Yikes. I admit it's also my fault because I did not ask these questions during the interview. I was naive because I did not prepare well, as it is my first time joining a company or startup. I have not signed any documents or paperwork from the beginning. If I ever resign from the job, would it be wise if I become their shareholder? Also, how do I exit gracefully without burning bridges? I would love to hear your thoughts. All right, so lots of red flags, lots
of red flags.
Wherever you want to start, let me hear your thoughts here.
I mean, is it even worth acknowledging, hey, you should never take a job where you aren't getting paid at all? And if you aren't getting paid at all, then you are a co-founder and you should be taking at least 10% equity stake in the firm. And then also, if they don't have revenue coming in the door and aren't able to pay salaries, why are they talking about like all this bullshit about like, these client applications like this mobile app and other dumb bullshit? But I think the thing that's most applicable to most people who are in these early stage firms is this shit around an AI algorithm. So maybe we dig into that.
Going back to the initial red flags, putting my lawyer hat on, please don't start businesses with no paperwork. Please cement the breakdown of the ownership and at least spell out the rules beforehand. So like you said,
and IP assignment.
Exactly. And yeah, that's another shocking thing. If you're actively like writing code, like that's an intangible medium, that's copyright, and they have not checked any of these boxes. And I guess it's not all that surprising being in college. I see a lot of college companies come out and some of this legal formalities and corporate hygiene are lacking, but it sounds like this user is being taken advantage of. So tough way to start. Yeah, I'm glad you double clicked on the AI angle, because we saw so much of this in the crypto and Web3 fanaticism. Like, slapping Web3 on your company is not going to fundamentally change your company, and it's not going to change the trajectory of the company. In some limited cases, maybe. And we're seeing a similar thing now where it's like, if you brand with AI, it's going to be a total game changer and funding will land in your lap and you're doing something completely novel. And I don't know what the app or company is supposed to do, but if you're counting on AI being your saving grace, you're going to need more than that.
So obviously these large language models and AI agents and all of this is going to be transformative. However, the adoption curve is probably going to look like a lot of other adoption curves. It's probably going to be like over, 20 some odd years. Legacy firms, Fortune 100 companies, are going to be relatively slow to adopt these tools. And the level of transformation is going to be smaller than you'd expect in those cases. Ultimately, when you're building a business, the core thing is, what is a transformation that you were able to provide to customers that they will pay money for, right? Like, that is the exchange. Whether you are like a staffing agency or marketing agency, right, where you're offering the transformation of giving them engineers, right, or decreasing their cost per acquisition. There is a transformation involved that you are selling. One big problem with all of this AI stuff is that they start with the solution instead of starting with the problem, and frankly, that's not going to help you with the distribution challenge here. Think about what's happening to ChatGPT and Bing AI, right? They're doing great. They like fastest 100 million users ever, all of that. And then suddenly now, like, they're turning on Bard in Google search, right? And everybody is going to have access to free large language model, in the search engine they already use. And that's like 90% of the search market in the US. It's just like distribution is what's gonna really win. So where you're really seeing AI and large language models, which are easy to plug in, be helpful, is like, if you've already got a SaaS in market, if you've already got a service in market, you're able to plug it in to fix some of the stuff on the back end and also some of the configuration challenges. So, think like ChatSpot, right, which is HubSpot's chat tool, which is literally just a wrapper for OpenAI, right? that allows you to do like what would be 20, 30 clicks in a single, chat response, right? That's great, and it reduces the adoption, the amount of work that goes into adopting HubSpot. I don't believe it's going to be like something where you can just slack together a prototype in a weekend and expect like a long-term adoption on that. It might be great for indie hackers to make a couple $100,000 in a short period of time in a gold rush, but it might not be a long-term strategy. So when you start thinking about AI as a moat, really what you're talking about is proprietary data. And if you look at what that ends up meaning, it's kind of like labeled data, right? It's like, do you have proprietary labeled data? So if you are a 5-person startup, odds are you do not have proprietary labeled data. You probably aren't Midjourney.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what to say other than like you need to come up with a business model that doesn't involve AI and then layer in AI later when you have like resources and a direction.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's also too early to be building it in-house. Like, it seems like they just got started. So, I think you made an excellent point about these companies that are just wrappers of OpenAI not having the legs to see it through to some of these institutional type startups. But starting with an API can be a really good way to test things out. And it sounds like they're not doing any sort of that. They're going straight to building because they have free labor from this user. So, yeah, AI really will be transformative. I completely agree. But we're going to see a lot of companies that are trying to force it into something. And like you said, you have to start with the problem. You have to build a company and then see how AI can level up your company. So I think that's really well said. To this user's main question, should I resign? I would love to hear your thoughts, but I think
it's an obvious yes.
It's an obvious yes, but also you're not really resigning because you're not a part of the company. You didn't do any of the paperwork. There's no documentation that is actually pulling this company together. So I guess I kind of see two paths here, which is one, leaving, or two, being very clear about what you deserve in the company, making sure that things are actually documented. It sounds like they're a co-founder, so this is the time where you're like, this is my lane, this is what I want to do, and if this isn't a fit for the company, like, this is brand early. You are not gonna blow up the company by walking away because there is no company. I respect the point where they're like, we're doing this hackathon, I don't want to leave and put them in jeopardy. Certainly co-founders leaving is problematic to a lot of investors. They see it as a red flag, but those concerns have not materialized yet. This is way too early. So I'll kick it back to you and let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Like ghost them or something. I don't know. It's just, if I were to go back and redo my career, right, I probably start in like what big four, like accounting or like ID or consulting, right? I would start there, so I could see a lot of business problems really fast and interact with a lot of smart people and see how they're thinking about things. Or I would go to like a medium-sized tech firm in like a business related role, like sales. Like sales is great. Sales is a great place to start. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't go work for a first-time founder, unless they're like, seriously growth stage or like, post IPO or something. Like, if they've got a seasoned leadership team in place, then it might be a valuable experience. But you don't want to put yourself in a room where every single person is inexperienced, because you're just not going to see how businesses actually run. And frankly, what I've noticed in startup land is frankly just a lack of rigor, especially like on the finance side. and how money gets spent. And you don't want to adopt that as a habit. Honestly, you probably don't want to go work at a post-economic firm like Google. Like I feel like that if you for somebody like this is like an entrepreneurial person. Like that's the signal I get.
Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneurial person, you don't want to go to a post-economic place where you'll learn a ton of bad habits, and you also don't want to work for a first-time founder, even if they've got venture capital, or especially if they've got venture capital, because you're also going to learn a ton of bad habits. That's I don't know if that lands with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's all really good advice. I give props to this user for going after it and doing this in college. I think there's a lot of great companies that can start in college, so don't get me wrong there. But I think your point is great about establishing some skills and getting out into the workplace where it's really going to advance your career and grow you as a professional. And I'll give one caveat to what I had said earlier about putting your stake in the ground and saying, like, this is what I will and will not do. You don't really have that luxury in an early stage company. And I'm getting a lot of, I don't knock it. I'm pretty much a first-time founder as well, but I think there's a lot of naivety here about like what it takes to what a startup entails. So you're going to have to wear a ton of different hats. You're going to do stuff that you don't want to do. People get their hands dirty and get out of their lane, and that's kind of the nature of a startup. Mm-hmm. But that's just a segue, kind of touching back on what I had said earlier. But fully endorse what you had given this founder. I think it's time to walk away. There's too many red flags too early on, and if you're already losing interest, then startups are draining emotionally, financially, in any way you can imagine. And if you're already losing that fire, then it's going to be a really tough road. So, any final thoughts for this poster?
Start working on customer development if you're going to stay here. Pause the build entirely, and find customers. Figure out like who you want to work with, like in terms of customers, like what the persona is that you want to work with. Get calls with about 100 of them, and find something that they're willing to pay for that is an urgent problem for them that nobody on the market is really solving yet, or that there isn't a great solution for. Talk with them. Don't build anything until you are able to provide that transformation manually or with off-the-shelf tools.
Yeah, completely agree. Very well said. You're welcome for the unsolicited advice poster belly flop in r/startups on Reddit. But Max, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciated your insights and your advice. How can listeners connect with you?
On Twitter DMs, I'm at M Weisbod, MWEIS, B as in boy, R as in Roger, O as in Oliver, D as in David, or via email, max at heybaton.com. That's HEY, Baton, BATON.com. Founder of Baton, and always love talking with other founders. So please reach out.
Great. Max, again, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll talk soon.
See you.
Thanks.
The Backseat Startup Podcast is brought to you by Startup Founder Daily, a media company focused on early-stage companies.